health and safety plan as it's an action item on the 7 p.m. Agenda. The draft, there's a copy at your place along with on the district website under board agendas for anybody that wants to follow along. So up until this point, the draft that you see in front of you was created this summer, and it was using, taking into consideration some of the guidance we received at that point, taking into consideration the board resolution from June 7th. And then basically I sent a communication out to the district community on, I believe it was July 6th, if I'm not mistaken, and shared some information. So the draft is consistent with that information as well. And it's just a matter of taking a look at the document itself. If there are recommended edits, then we could make those edits, and then that would all be a part of what's approved at the regular meeting that begins at 7 o'clock. And once the ESSER required health and safety plan has been approved, it'll be posted to the district website and also to eGrants. So that's
so for the board members, and if you see me talking down, Al Moyer is on vacation but wanted to call in. So until we get our technology system up and running, he's going to be listening in and answering on my phone. I'll have the mic down for any of his comments or votes throughout the meeting. But to get the workshop going, I believe at this point everybody on the board has had a copy of the draft. Everybody on the board was aware of a unanimous vote in June that was a resolution outlining our reopening plan. But since that date and time, Mike has taken a look at the document for our health and safety plan and is proposing some edits or language changes to it. So Mike, if you want to outline the changes for the board, and that would be a part of our agenda tonight and on a vote up or down.
Right, so excuse me, so absolutely. So I gave a handout to our board members, Dr. Perrin and Mr. McQuaid, our solicitor, and on the handout it's 5 pages long, and it's essentially the draft health and safety plan that Dr. Perrin made available on Friday. On the left-hand side of the document is the plan as proposed, and on the right-hand side is the suggested or recommended new language. Now, each paragraph is going to have a change to the right of it if there was a change, and that would be a strike and replace. If there was no language change recommendations, you're going to see an OK next to it, and that means there'll be not necessary to make any changes to the current language as sets. So the first one here is just, and I don't know if I need to read through these word for word, or if the board, since we have a half an hour, if you guys would like to read through and see what the changes are. But essentially what it is in a nutshell, my intention on this is to provide more flexibility and more localized control for the administration and for the district. I didn't really find anything wrong with the original language. I think it was in the spirit of our proposal that we passed in June, but the language changes just kind of give more control and oversight on the district itself versus individual agencies. And I think that's important because we have over 500 school districts in 67 counties, and each district is very, very different. I know that even in our county, our districts like to cohort and kind of do things very similar, but I'm very concerned with how we do things in the Gettysburg Area School District. So I'll leave it up to the board. Since this is a workshop, if you guys want to take a few minutes to read through and have any questions, or if you'd like me to go through and outline them, I'm fine either way. And something else that's worth sharing, in just full transparency, these changes were reviewed and basically authored by a law firm, and Palisades School District, Penn Ridge School District, Bristol Township School District, Aliquippa School District, and Ambridge Area School District have all adopted very similar language. So it's already been, we have districts that have already had board meetings and approved their health and safety plans with very, very similar language.
So the edits, Mike, are still consistent with the draft and with the resolution from the board, correct?
Absolutely, and I did share my recommendations with Dr. Perrin a little earlier, and I don't believe there was any objections. It's still in spirit. There's no major changes.
That basically states a number of the things in the draft, just a different, different way.
Absolutely.
Kathleen?
Yeah, Mike, I want to thank you for all the effort that you went through. I really appreciate that. But I'll say that I would have liked more time to digest the suggestions. So we basically have this 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would absolutely have liked more time.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Mr. President, do you prefer we address you first or just right to the fellow board member?
I'm sorry.
Do we address you first to ask a question of a fellow board member or go right to the fellow?
No, you,
Okay,
please, it's a workshop.
thank you. Mr. Dickinson, thank you for the research you've done on this and pulling this together and the layout of comparing side by side. I appreciate that. I do have a question. When I look to, in the first paragraph revision, the third sentence, the revisions will be recommended to the board for approval and changes will be communicated to student staff and the greater school community. Was there any discussion in the research that you were doing? Does that tie the hands of the superintendent to make a change if board meetings only happen every 2 weeks?
No, absolutely not. I think it does the contrary. I think it's going to give the administration to take all of the federal, state, and local guidance into consideration. And if there were any edits or recommendations to change the plan, he would communicate that to the board for approval. And then once approved, it would be communicated out to the greater student, staff, and school community as those changes take place.
Thank you.
And with this plan, just to be clear for everybody, it has to be reviewed and updated every 6 months, but it can happen more often if needed.
But Mike, let me hop in here. The changes here, if I'm not mistaken, are language changes only, and it benefits the district in the sense of what we did last year. When we saw numbers increase, Dr. Perrin had the ability to shut down a classroom opposed to shutting down a school, or he had to shut down a school opposed to a classroom. And all we're doing here with the language change is basically saying the same thing as what the health and safety plan. It just, we're changing a couple words.
Absolutely. It's actually given the administration more flexibility. I think initially when we first submitted our health and safety plan, Dr. Perrin had the ability to specifically shut down a classroom versus a whole grade or a whole building. And then when we had to sign that letter of attestation, that kind of gave the bureaucratic agencies a little more control and oversight. And if you remember, we started shutting down entire schools or buildings versus localizing and managing outbreaks at a local level.
Thank you.
May I ask a question? When did you get a chance, Dr. Perrin, to look at the revisions that we have in front of us? Is this something that you also are seeing for the first time like us?
Mike shared some comments over the phone with me about possible changes.
Okay. Do you feel in line with the changes?
Yeah, I think that if you do just a side-by-side check, it doesn't change the intent of any of the language on the draft plan. I think it simply makes the language a little bit stronger in terms of the local control.
Can you give me an example of that? I know that Mike was talking about more flexibility for yourself. Can you give me an example, like in the changes that you see?
So I think, for instance, if you would take a look at some of Mike's language, you see things like consideration of guidance from agencies versus following the guidance from the agencies, because at times when there are so many agencies, which agency is that? Like, which one are you following? So it really just says that we're constantly keeping an eye on it, taking a look at various recommendations from all agencies and then making a decision locally. I think.
And may I ask Mike Dickerson, this law firm that you mentioned, was that something that you needed to pay for, or was that something that was done pro bono?
I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that?
I'm just trying to figure out at what point you decided to go to a law firm and if there was some type of payment for that work that was done.
I have a personal attorney on retainer, and this wouldn't be the first time that I used him for questions that I personally had as a school board member or a parent of students in this district.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Perrin, could you explain to us the process of communications that goes on between superintendents in Adams County? Many times we get emails directed to us that indicate that other districts are doing something totally different than us, and I want to know exactly what that process is and how it works.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the context is important. There's a difference between health and safety plans and snow days, but certainly to a degree, we keep in very, very close contact. And I would say, not just within Adams County, but within the greater intermediate unit between Franklin, Adams, and York counties. So for instance, when the communication was sent out in July, for instance, that shared that face coverings would be optional for students, that was consistent with what was going on at the county and a great majority of the IU at that time.
And how are they dealing with it as of today, any different than back in June and July?
Well, a number of them passed those plans with that kind of content in July, but it's been fluid for 2 years. So, something could come, a mandate could come from somewhere in 3 weeks that could change people's plans. But if I had to answer, are we outside of or consistent with those districts? If that's the gist of your question, it's pretty consistent with what other districts, and even some of the other districts that have been kind of in the papers in PA. You've probably seen articles about Bucks County and a couple of other districts as well. So it's been pretty consistent, but like we've been doing for 2 years, we always kind of keep abreast of what's going on because things have been pretty fluid. But I think in terms of where we are, where we've been, the fact that we think that kids are better off in classrooms with our teachers, and all of those things. I think that basically the plan to start off is a good one, and then we would have to, if necessary, adjust. And I think that the language that Mike shared still gives us the ability to do that, but gives us the ability to make those decisions. For Gettysburg.
And our communication system dealing with getting it out into the public as soon as we can, we're still using the same process. Has it been updated to include new parents to the community and kindergarten parents and so forth?
It catches anybody that enrolls in the district and utilizes any information that they've submitted for that. And so anything that we would send out, for instance, say tomorrow, would catch everybody that had updated their information.
Today.
Yeah, up until that point. So that's generally the way that we've been communicating. I think the last communication that I sent out to the district community was that July communication because that's kind of where we were and where we plan to go. And this health and safety plan for ESSER basically just supports that. So we're not here tonight changing the plans that I communicated in July. We're basically supporting them and kind of reinforcing them.
And I guess this is a rather crude way of putting it, but all parents can trust the board that we are communicating to them the most up-to-date process and plan that we have as a board.
Absolutely. we haven't done that more intensely than we've done that in the past probably 18 months, I would say, in my 27 years in public education, I think. It's been a unique couple of years. Certainly, I, along with everybody else, will be glad someday in some month whenever we can look back and tell stories about this. But for me, the important things are getting all the kids in school. I think the idea of starting off with the mask being optional for students is a place that we can start, and then we can adjust from there.
And have you just made me think of something else, sorry, take up all this time.
Yeah.
Have you heard from parents since we advertised or communicated how we're going to do it, their concern over children not wearing masks and the options that are still available to them if they choose to not send their children to school because of that?
Sure. So when you have a large district population of X number of thousand of students, there are going to be folks on both sides of that fence. So a few people have reached out, asking the board to reconsider, masking all students, those kinds of things. But we have, whenever we've responded, some of the folks have asked just what's the other option if I don't want to come back, every day, and we've told them about the GASD cyber, and so we have a number of students that have signed up for GASD cyber, but a great majority of students have indicated a desire to come back to school full time.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, question, just so I'm clear as I go through these pages. Page 1, the 2 paragraphs that are suggested new language, is that to replace all of the language that goes along with number 1?
That's correct.
So something that I see as I look through in the short period of time, as I look through the suggestions, I mean, the intent seems very different. It seems rather non-committal. So when I look, for instance, at number 1, and I'd like to talk about some other ones as well, but number 1, we've got some really specific information in the original plan, which is replaced with 2 brief paragraphs that, again, are non-committal.
That's correct. Sometimes less is more, and this gives our individual school district and our administration more flexibility to make decisions based on what is best for our school district.
Yeah, I mean, except we're talking about a pandemic, which, again, is really different. And I'd like to remind all of us about our mission statement. The Gettysburg Area School District mission statement clearly says that our purpose is to provide a safe and healthy environment in which all students can learn. My concern with the non-committal language is that we're not doing that.
Ms. Pratt, I have full faith and confidence that Dr. Perrin and our administration will make the appropriate decisions for what's best for our students and school district community.
Well, I have full faith and confidence as well in the people who are employed in the district. Dr. Perrin, his team, our teachers, building staff. Absolutely, but the point of this plan is to give specific guidance. Dr. Perrin, we hope that you're with us for a very long time, but what if you get some great opportunity in like Bermuda at their school district and decide to leave us next week? I mean, I just feel like this plan really needs to supersede any individual or individuals who are in their position. That's the purpose of the plan. And if a plan is, frankly, again, as non-committal as this one is, I don't call it a plan.
Mrs. Pratt, are you asking if the pandemic response team will be removed? If that paragraph is removed, will the pandemic response team still be in existence?
They are referenced further in the plan.
Could you note what page or paragraph?
Yep, absolutely. So if you would go to, I think it's my page 3. 1 second. Dr. Perrin and I just talked about it. Give me 1 second. I'll tell you where it's at.
Perhaps page 5, the last one? The last bullet on page 5? I numbered them when they were handed to me in the packet. So
Mike.
there's a border that says page 6 of 8, and then item I, and to the left
Oh, yeah,
then a
it's,
bullet.
I'm sorry, Dr. Soliday. It's the last page, last sentence.
Okay.
And coordinating with all state and local health officials in regards to the health and safety plan. The pandemic team director of student services, school nurses will collaborate with and coordinate to confirm updated guidance from federal, state, and health officials.
But the intent of that, again, seems really different to me, unless I'm misunderstanding it. The original language says that that group of individuals will coordinate with state and local health officials. But the new language says that they will coordinate with each other to confirm updated guidance.
Correct.
So they're not coordinating directly with state and local health officials. They're just talking to each other to confirm the guidance.
Perhaps this next question may help close a gap. Dr. Perrin, it's my understanding from communications coming out that we'll see less, guidance is usually the word that's used for the Department of Education, less guidance coming from the Department of Education regarding COVID response. We would more likely see, and now I think we could use the word mandate, when it becomes a public health concern, when a contagious virus is moving through a classroom or a building like we would with MRSA or SARS or something like that. Is that your understanding also?
Right. They have basically all but promised that there wouldn't be any guidance from the Pennsylvania Department of Education as we begin this school year. And Pennsylvania Department of Health will be reaching out sometime in August to share any changes to the procedures that we have to comply with regards to reporting cases and contact tracing. But a lot of the things that were in place last year will disappear, like the charts that were used to do short-term closures, and all of those things will be gone because those were from the PA Department of Education working in conjunction with Department of Health. So any directives that we get really from this point on, as you stated, would be more likely to come from the Pennsylvania Department of Health. I would be surprised really to receive anything from the Department of Education at this point. And they also said that Department of Health also mentioned that there wouldn't be too many significant changes in those processes either. Really, it's just a matter of the forms they might be using. They're trying to expedite some of the stuff that districts labored with last year, which was utilizing different forms, emailing different people. They're trying to streamline the reporting system and those kinds of things. So yeah, things that were in place last year will not be in place in districts this year. You won't see things like COVID dashboards and those kind of things because we're not keeping track of for short-term closures anymore.
Again, that reflects more of that local decision-making on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Okay.
And just as a further note, to be completely transparent, part of the reason I took the initiative to research this and make these language changes is because last year, about this same time, I watched Dr. Perrin and several folks in the administration probably spend 50 hours a week trying to plan and jump through all these hoops in terms of, formulating plans and coming up with things to open our schools. And literally, Dr. Perrin will tell you, within a day or so, or hours of things trying to get the ball rolling, the PDE or some government agency would change the rules or move the goalpost. I think this board and this district has gone to great lengths to follow recommendations, to take this pandemic very seriously. And And we need to give our administrators in this district the tools that they need to be able to come up with a plan and put that plan into action without having to change it at the last minute. And that was the spirit behind this.
Thanks, Mike. I have first I want to say thank you. On page 2, I really like the additional language that is more specific, that all admin buildings, school buildings, athletic facilities will be open for full-time use in instruction. Thanks for adding that. I really like that. If we look at page 3, I'm a little bit confused with something that could be interpreted as a contradiction. So page 3, I'm looking at lowercase a. The current language is that the requirement to wear masks will consider the most recent guidance, et cetera, et cetera. So, okay. So the decision will consider the most recent guidance, but I interpret the original language as really meaning it's still Dr. Perrin and the board that make a decision. The new language, I'm worried about a contradiction. If I look at bullet number 3, that says that the district will continue to monitor and evaluate the most recent guidance, et cetera. Does that contradict bullet number 2 that says that masks will be optional? Can we have both of those together?
I don't see why not. Having a policy where, things are optional, which was what the resolution that we passed in June. The district also has to do its due diligence and take into consideration all recommendations. And there could be something lurking, weeks or months down the road that might really change the way we're going to look at things. And I think it would be responsible to leave that language in there. It's because we may need to consider new guidance and make some changes, or the administration may make recommendations on updating this plan, and we need to have the ability to leverage that.
So it looks like, Kathleen, to me, it looks like a when question kind of. Masks will be optional. It's kind of like how we're starting the year, and then kind of the ongoing part of it is continuing to, monitor, different guidance and things as they come down. So that's
This is the plan as submitted now, and having the ability to take into account to change. This plan might change. So that's how I interpret it.
Carrie.
Mr. Dickinson, just 2 typos. I think one will go away with the changes, but I'm not sure. So on your page 3, the second set of bullets, which would be parallel to the item B, outdoor learning spaces needs an R in it. And this is where I'm not sure it'll go away. On page 5, item F, there was a typo in the draft plan. There's an ampersand and then a semicolon. The semicolon wouldn't belong there, and that may very well go away with the proposed changes in the bullets to the right.
I made note of those.
Now you see what you're talking about. Yep.
And just kind of a friendly addition to that on page 4, and Carrie, I'm sorry, maybe you said this. On page 4, bullet number 1, influenza and other infectious diseases. We'll need an and in there.
I'm sorry, Kathleen, could you say that again, please?
Yeah, so page 4, the first bullet reads, the district, et cetera, influenza, currently there's a comma, I think, influenza, comma, other infectious diseases. We'll have to replace that comma with an and.
You get that?
Did you get that one, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. I'll get it from him.
Are there any additional questions related to the health and safety plan and the change of language that Mike has introduced here this evening? I mean, we'll have an opportunity when it comes up for vote, but during the workshop here, if we want to direct a question to any of us or Mike, please feel free.
Mr. President, I just have a question probably for you. On the agenda tonight, are we voting specifically on?
Yes, it's on the agenda as an action item for this evening. Mike could have made a motion at the time that it came to the floor, adopting or changing some of the language, but I believe, and I don't know this as a fact, that his conversations, I guess with Jason, they believed that bringing it before the board in a workshop setting was more proper than doing it through an amendment to the motion or to the action item during the regular meeting.
So I have to say again, I didn't have enough time. 30 minutes before I'm being asked to vote on something isn't really enough time to digest it, ask questions, get the answers that I need. I'm actually really comfortable with the plan that says draft on it, which is the plan before these new changes. So that makes me unhappy because when I vote no tonight on the plan with the new changes, it certainly isn't that I don't want our students, our teachers, our staff to be safe. So I would have preferred this had kind of come down a little differently tonight.
And again, I'll weigh in reluctantly here because I was on the outside. But I think what you're hearing, no matter what plan we adopt this evening, the unknown is out there. And I recall last year, hours on hours with Dr. Perrin back and forth related to different changes coming. So whatever's adopted here this evening, I suspect that we're probably going to be back at this drawing board again looking at recommendations or mandates potentially. But I don't know that. So the health and safety plan tonight is on the agenda with Mike's changes. And I mean, I certainly respect where you have to vote or whatever reason you would have to vote which way.
So would I make a motion to adopt the proposed language changes set forth in this workshop, or are the changes automatically?
Yeah, this is not an action
No, you would
session,
have to,
so-
yeah. When that action item comes up for vote or comes on the table, at that point you would make the motion for the language changes. The language changes, I believe, would be the first thing to vote on, and then the actual health and safety plan a second thing, or can they be combined?
Well, if somebody makes a motion to adopt the health and safety plan, that person can say, I make the motion to adopt it in Form A or Form B. So in the draft plan or in Mike's plan. And then you can go from there.
Right, we've never
Right,
voted on this. It's
right.
not been on the floor yet.
And forgive me if I'm stating the obvious, but one of the changes had to do with the prior language being the district will follow any state mandates and concerning masking, and that was dropped. And I would say that regardless of what you put in the health and safety plan, you must follow the law. And certain mandates are, in fact, the law. So whether that's in there or not, that's an implied part of the plan.
May I ask you, Mr. McQuaid, how long have you had to look over this? Is it the same amount of time as we have, or were you able to actually sit with this and make sure that it was sound regarding you as a solicitor?
Is that towards me?
No, to
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
solicitor directly. I wanted to know if you had time to look this over and you felt confident that it was something that was sound for us to go forward with.
Oh, me personally?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've seen it as long as the rest of the body has. I mean, it was presented to me this evening. I can say, from a legal perspective, the board does have a good deal of discretion, and there are many things that you could do or not do that would be legal. The question is, what's the wise thing to do, and that's up to your discretion. In terms of vetting the language of these documents, no, I've not had that opportunity.
I think that's where I have a problem, is that we really didn't have enough time. I have to agree with you, Ms. Pratt. And it would have been wonderful even if we had, a few hours to review this. I know one body in our school district that I feel hasn't had as much of a voice as they should as our school nurses. They actually are the ones who have to implement a lot of this day to day in our schools, and those are people that I would have gone to see how they felt about the language, if it was something that actually worked in their day to day. But as of right now, I just don't have the opportunity to do that.
And one more, I'll stick my nose in one more place. I do have some concern about moving away from the language on page 4E, that refers to the district following guidance from the Pennsylvania Department of Health concerning contact tracing, isolation, et cetera. I think that I would be very wary to do anything in the medical field, whether it be with the flu or with pertussis or anything, without listening to and adhering to recommendations from the medical professionals, Department of Health.
So if I hear you correct, you are referring to, it's E to the right of the blocked portion.
Correct.
And that is what you would recommend keeping in addition to what we have to the right?
Or keeping something similar to it. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I mean, if I could just interject here, this plan, number one, could be debated if it's even legally required to submit. This plan is basically so you can qualify for government, for federal funds. Historically, it could be debated on whether or not this plan is legal or not. And if you can have all the questions you want, and that's fine. But there's, like I said, there's not any language in my proposed changes that has not already been adopted by the school districts that I outlined at the beginning of my statement here. And all it is doing, like Mr. McQuaid pointed out, it is basically not telling the district what it has to do. It's telling that it's basically giving the district more leeway. So the district they can follow any protocols that they want in terms of contact tracing and doing anything with communicable diseases. It's just giving them more flexibility and more leeway to run this district autonomously and not be driven based on mandates out of Harrisburg or political decisions. So, I mean, that was, take it or leave it, that was my intent.
And I'll say again, that I think that some of the original language does give that flexibility. So we're on page 3A. I mean, the requirement to wear masks will consider the most recent guidance. I mean, I feel like that does give flexibility already. It's saying will consider. And there are a couple other places that I really felt the same, that I wasn't sure why the change was needed, except to dilute intent. Again, I'm happy with the original proposal.
I mean, we could go line by line, because now we have, about 10 revisions or changes or additions or what have you. We may need to, because this plan is going to be voted on, and the reading's coming up. So if we want to start on page 1, we can go down these lines and see who wants to change things, and then if I'm under the assumption that we'll go in, we will vote on the original plan that we were coming in here to either agree to or not agree to, or then we would agree to the changes, and 2 separate things. But I want to make sure that I know exactly what the changes would be so that I can vote appropriately. And these guys don't even know what we're looking at.
Well, I guess I just need to add the comment that this document, this plan, is indeed a dynamic, fluid document, one that can easily be adjusted as we're told it needs to be or we discover it needs to be. So I'm comfortable voting on it tonight, knowing that that process is in place and will be utilized rather than look for commas or for capital letters or whatever the case might be. I think we need to make sure that our district and our staff and kids are protected, and I think this plan does it, as it demonstrated when it was in its original form through June, that it worked quite well.
Just a reminder to everybody, too, that a lot of the changes that come down the pike, whether it's the first 3 weeks of school, the first month of school, those types of things, we generally have to shift practice well ahead of being able to get a document back to the board, like those types of things. So my team and I obviously would communicate when things would need to shift based on some of the changes we talked about tonight. So if the language is general, it still gives us the opportunity to act within the language.
I would agree, and if anything, the suggested language changes have generalized. I think to kind of Kathleen's point, it's left some vagueness and given the school administration the ability to be able to make decisions that make sense for Gettysburg Area School District. What happens in Allegheny County or in Harrisburg might be drastically different on what's going on in Adams County. We could be seeing different scenarios in Gettysburg versus Bermudian Springs, and I think that the draft changes just kind of give our district and our administration more flexibility without being told, what to do on a one-size-fits-all basis, which we clearly experienced last year. And as Dr. Perrin can attest, they had plans and worked hard to get things in place and had to literally change things on 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. So, that was my take on it.
Is there anything additional? I'm not sure structurally or how you want to proceed. It is an action item for this evening. There are several changes, whether they be grammar, that have been noted that Dr. Perrin said he'll correct. But I guess I would have to ask, is there a structural problem with anything that is vastly different from the resolution that was voted on in June and the health and safety plan that's sitting here before us that we looked at over the last week or two? That's where it really comes down to me. And I'm seeing it too, I'm reading it here. And I'm seeing some language changing, but we're almost arguing the definition of and versus is in terms of whether it's a generality. The board voted a resolution 9-0 to go a certain path with the understanding that the health and safety plan, just like last year, was going to be turned upside down at some point based upon mandates or based upon recommendations that obviously the administration and this board won't ignore. And I suspect prior to the start of school, we'll have something else that's going to change on this document, or it's going to have to be revised. And we went through, so I'm at the point where, having to run this meeting, I want to put the motion on the floor, but I also want to be cognizant if anybody wants any significant structural changes, maybe we should air them now and incorporate them in a motion once it hits the floor.
So I'd like to just repeat myself and say that I do see substantive changes in the recommendations. I believe that this plan, which I think is what we're supposed to vote on tonight, right, with the red letters, this plan, I believe, does give the superintendent and this board flexibility. I think it's already here. I think there are, again, substantive changes in the new language that I am really uncomfortable with. In part, our own solicitor has pointed something out. So I am more than comfortable voting on what I thought we were voting on tonight. I am uncomfortable voting on this new suggested language. Thank you.
Are there any other matters or questions for the workshop here? If there are not, we'll take a 5-minute recess and we will start our regular school board meeting. Howard, are you still there? Good evening. For those who just arrived and anybody who's tuned in on live stream, the Board of Directors held a workshop prior to the start of this meeting for the purpose of discussing a health and safety plan. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the Gettysburg Area School District. Public comment is welcome, and issues will be referred to the appropriate board committee or administrator. Comments will be summarized in the official board minutes, which will be available by contacting the business office. Please take a moment and silence your cell phones or any other devices. Ms. Collins, all board members are present with the exception of Timon, who is excused this evening. Al Moyer joins us on my cell phone. He'll be available for all votes, and he's also watching on live stream. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notices and communications.
Just a couple. I asked Mr. Luss just to share just a brief update on the work that's being done at the high school.
Hello all, Jeremy Lusk, high school principal. A lot of fast and furious work going on at the high school, on front stage and behind the scenes as well. Does it make me all very anxious? Absolutely yes. We knew that this phase one, 1B I guess we'd call it, because we started in April with our library and a few other areas in the school, just by the nature of the process of things. And the construction crews, multiple, have been working to get our main classroom section, which would be the B section of the high school, ready for August 23rd. And they have said that they will be ready to release classrooms to us by that point, giving our team probably, I'll say, barely enough time to clean, get furniture back in, reintroduce things for the learning environment. Will it all be finished in finality? No. And I tried to communicate that to parents in my most recent message to them. The construction process will continue through the year. Once they're done with B section or almost done, they're actually already itching to get into the next phase, which would include our auditorium and music wing area and a few other spots, and move on from there. But to the point, like I said, we'll be ready to start school. It will still be a building under construction. Will it be safe for kids? Absolutely yes, otherwise we wouldn't move in. So, I know a few folks were asking, will the fire suppression systems be good to go? Again, we probably wouldn't be moving into the building if it wasn't. So it'll be cleaned and ready enough for us to get in there. It won't be perfect, as a few folks have shared with me, and I've shared with a few folks. Imagine renovating your kitchen. I think anybody who's done that would admit that it's not necessarily a fun process. But when it's all said and done, you kind of forget that time period of construction and look at that newly finished kitchen and think like, oh, I love this kitchen. This is an investment for our students, for the community. In the end, it's going to be fabulous. Again, will it cause me a few extra gray hairs and a lot of stress until then? Yes. But I and my team will make sure that kids are ready to learn in a good environment no matter what is still going on throughout the school year. So I'll try and update my parents and everybody else involved in high school community as much as we can. But we're looking forward to school, and we'll make the most of each space. When it's available, we'll have to shift some kids around. Again, considering that I just said when we're done with the B section, then work will be beginning in the auditorium and music wing. So then where are you doing music? Well, we'll be doing music in the library, we'll be doing music in the cafeteria, we'll be doing music in the auxiliary gym, and we'll be doing music outside. That's the answer. And so we'll have to shift some folks around here and there, and we'll come up with the best plan we can come up with to do that and get the project done. And I guess we're kind of looking forward to that. We're looking forward to school, I can tell you that. We'll look forward to seeing kids come back and look forward to learning with them throughout the year. So as questions come up, I'll try within reason to answer questions to parents who email me. I'll try to keep them updated before they have to ask me, but I know that we can all read only so many emails, so we'll try and keep that on point. Any questions from you specifically?
Jeremy, if I can just summarize real quick, because I know with conversations with you, we get inundated with emails. So the summary of this is our students are returning to in-person learning at the high school. The starting date that was originally set is going to be held firm. There'll be some minor inconveniences related to the construction. The airflow and the fire suppression system and all the stuff that would make a school unsafe for our students has been addressed and will be addressed. Would that be pretty much summing it up?
That sums it up. There will be a few bathrooms that aren't ready to go, but will we have plenty of bathrooms to use? Yes. Will we direct kids as we need to? Yes. Will it be perfect? No. But it'll be worth it. Look forward to next year and beyond at this time. But it's an investment, like I said.
Thank you.
Anything else from anybody else? Thank you.
Thanks for the update, and also thanks to Tom and Jim Hoffman and all of the facility staff. To say that the summer's been really busy for them would be an understatement. So I really appreciate the work that they've done with regards to the district end of things, but also in helping kind of keep the contractors towards that date to get students back in. So thank you all very, very much. Right. The other communication I have is one specific to curriculum, as a couple of questions had come up. So I wrote the statement out because I want it to be as clear and concise as it can possibly be. That way it can quell any questions that there might be hanging out there. There have been no changes to the district curriculum. Our teachers are responsible for and committed to teaching the district curriculum, along with building positive relationships with students. Fidelity is maintained through the supervision and evaluation process. In short, our focus is on getting ready for the 21-22 school year, and no curriculum changes have been made or on our agenda for board consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. Citizens' participation. In no particular order. Jeremiah Light. Good evening, sir.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity here. So originally I was just going to speak just to thank you guys for taking the vote last time to have mask optional, vaccine optional, having that language, and really appreciate that as a parent. I know obviously you have the changes and things that you're talking through right now, so who knows what's going to happen with the future in terms of ongoing guidance and things like that. But just as a parent, I just want to voice my opinion and have those, because I know I'm not the only one that thinks this way, so I just like to share my views around it. One thing around just the whole spiel with masks and shutting down and social distancing, all those things, I just want to say that the CDC and the things that they put out, we don't elect the CDC. There's a lot of bureaucrats that are involved in the CDC and even organizations like the FDA that we don't elect, and it's a revolving door with pharmaceutical companies, other places that really don't have the best interest of children especially, and the rest of us at hand. So I think we need to keep that in mind with any decisions that are made. I'm not a lawyer, but I also know that terms and words matter in terms of mandates and laws. Mandates aren't laws, so if there is a mandate that's made, it doesn't mean it's a law. They're not the same thing. Just a few points that I want to make. Contact tracing and the data that's taken from that. I've already seen that with one of my children from their daycare, there was identity theft issue, privacy issue. So I'd like to say that, you know, I guess you have to follow what guidance you're given in some respects to that, but I'd like to see a minimization of that as much as possible. Also, you know, that there's negative impacts with masks, social distancing, in terms of psychological, mental impacts to children, and that doesn't seem to be talked about too much, but it should be talked about a lot more. You know, kids that are learning how to speak, how to form words, how to read, they can't see words being formed on the faces of their classmates or their teachers. It's very important that you know, that's affecting their development. And there's been studies that show that children really aren't disease vectors that are bringing the contagion around and spreading it that much. That it's very limited to what children are actually contributing to outbreaks in terms of COVID and spreading it. So that's something else that seems to get, you know, there's all this focus on kids even down to 2 years old wearing masks, but the data isn't there that supports that it even makes sense at all to mask kids. Europe doesn't do it for kids under 12, and I think, you know, a lot of the reason is there's just no data for it. The data shows that there's no reason to do that. So that's really all I had to say. I just want to thank you again for the vote last time, and I hope it kind of stays that way and we don't make any, you know, rash decisions to change things up and require masks on a whim with a few extra cases or, you know, scary variant that comes out of nowhere or whatever. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Carol Rebert. Good evening, ma'am.
Sorry, I'm a little slow.
It's okay.
Good evening. My name is Carol Rebert. I'm a resident of Adams County and reside within the boundaries of Gettysburg Area School District. I graduated from Gettysburg High School in 1971, my mother in 1947, and my son in 2008. I am co-chair of the Adams County Moms for Liberty chapter. The Adams County chapter is a part of Moms for Liberty National, which started in Brevard County, Florida. We are a 501c4 nonprofit organization. To date, we are a part of 82 chapters in 26 states, and we have over 30,000 members and growing. The mission of Moms for Liberty in regards to our schools is to hold board members, administrators, and teachers accountable for their decisions, or we will work to replace them. Over the years, we believe the line between parents and education has become increasingly blurred. Our mission is to make those lines clear again. Moms for Liberty believe parents have the responsibility and constitutional right to instill and guide moral and character-building values in the home. The responsibility of school districts is to provide a quality education for our children to each child's ability and prepare them to become contributing members of society. In the past, it seems that we as parents have become too trustful of the education system maintaining those boundaries between parent and child. Schools are not the place to promote one political ideology over another, force worldviews, encourage political activism, or drive life-altering decisions on its students. Moms for Liberty is in the process of requesting, through Right to Know requests, all curriculum to review and research, not only in Gettysburg area school districts, but all districts in Adams County. If we find anything we believe to be in conflict with parental authority, we will address it. We will approach these conflicts with respect to those representing the district and hope for the same respect in return to address and understand our concerns. We look forward to working with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Race is not political. Race is not political. It's a shame
Please, citizens' participation. If you want to speak, feel free to go out, sign up for the form, and the board will recognize you. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to break into a show in the middle of a boardroom and disrespect anyone. Ma'am, I am being very polite here. Thank you. Next, Karen Martin, please.
Good evening, board members and concerned citizens. My name is Karen Utz Martin. Tonight, I'll speak of true safety in regards to our children. Within a classroom, are we able to tell the difference between masked students? Well, of course we can, due to many differences in appearance, including skin color, hair color, length, body build, body mannerisms, personality, and of course their seat assignments. In a classroom environment, it is important to understand and read a student's learning face. Are they comprehending the teachings? Are they confused? Are they sad, happy, or struggling to breathe fresh air? What about their emotions? Is that not concerning to you? Allow me to ask you, deciding board members, this question. Could you pick a masked child out in a crowd of 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people? By requiring our children to wear face masks, whether in schools or any public place, you are robbing them of their one hope of being found in the unfortunate event that they are kidnapped, their faces. Did you know that more than 2,000 missing child reports are filed each day, and that many of them can be easily found when parents provide specific details of their physical appearance, including a photo of their face? Did you know that a child in America is over 66,000 times more likely to be human trafficked than to get COVID-19? Your decision to mask our children is allowing child abduction and trafficking so much easier on the offenders, who I may add are also masked. You don't believe me? How about Elizabeth Smart? She was abducted for 9 months, and her abductor took her out in the public all the time. Her face was plastered everywhere. You're probably picturing her face right now, years later. Everyone was looking for her. She was even questioned by police prior to her rescue, but because her kidnapper made her wear a mask, not one person recognized her face. You can cut a child's hair, change the color, put a hat on, and put a mask on them, and the abducted child looks completely different, but yet somehow the same as the 2,000 other children around them wearing masks. Masking a child immediately renders them unable to show emotions and unable to verbally communicate for help. How many children do you think are walking through our streets and in our stores with their abductors, yet go unnoticed because wearing a mask or a face covering isn't even considered abnormal to way too many folks these days? It is very abnormal to me. I stand before you this moment begging all of you listening to please fight for our children's physical safety. Is masking our children worth this risk? Will you who vote to mask our children's appearances and emotions take responsibility if and when they go missing? How much are you willing to risk? It's time for our communities together to rally on behalf of what is really important, which is our students. Thank you for this opportunity to address you all.
Thank you. Charles Wise. Good evening.
Good evening, thanks. I'm here to speak in support of a teacher, Alicia Sanders, who was unfairly maligned, I think, in a Gettysburg Times article on Saturday. She was portrayed in this article, which was an article about this group, Moms for Liberty. She was portrayed as somebody who is sort of planning to go rogue and teach critical race theory in the schools, and I think that is entirely false. I think the truth is that she signed an online pledge promising to tell the truth, to teach the truth about race and about history and about other issues, and I think that is exactly what we want our teachers to do, teach the truth. I had 3 kids who went through the Gettysburg public schools, and all 3 of them had Ms. Sanders for 8th grade civics. I've spoken to her on many occasions. I think she's phenomenal. She is a great teacher. My children tell me that she's one of their favorite teachers, and so I hate to see her name sort of maligned in the newspaper like that. In reading the article and thinking about how I was going to respond, it sort of occurred to me again, I knew this before, that she is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm right, but I may be mistaken. She is the only black teacher in the Gettysburg area school district. And I think that is a real problem. And I think, so my daughter, who's black, tells me that in addition to just being a phenomenal teacher, Ms. Sanders, she appreciated that Ms. Sanders looked like her, that she had a teacher finally in the schools that looked like her. And I think that that's really important for black students, to see students in teachers in the school that look like them, that they can relate to in that way. I think it's even more important, maybe, or at least as important for white students to see teachers from a variety of different ethnic backgrounds and to hear their perspectives when they have a different perspective, whether they have a different ethnic background or come from a different location. I think that diversity in our teachers is incredibly important. I imagine that you are aware that we do not have a diverse body of teachers, and I just encourage you to redouble your efforts to do so. I mean, it was poignant to me that in this article, the only black teacher in Gettysburg area school district was singled out. I think that is a problem. It's a sign of a problem. I think we have to address that problem. And just to say that Alicia Sanders is an awesome teacher in my experience and from everything I've heard. I just want to get that, make sure you understand that, and make sure you know how much support and friendship she has in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Vanessa Shearer. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Shearer. You may recognize my name. I recently sent a letter to the school board members introducing myself and my children's experiences with the hybrid scheduling that was implemented in school last year. I did want to take a moment to thank the few of you who took the time to acknowledge me and my concerns. I appreciate it very much. We seem to live in a time where it's very easy to get lost behind a screen, whether we're trying to educate ourselves on a subject or whether we're trying to communicate with other people about different matters. In some cases, it has replaced human in-person interaction entirely. And at times, it is difficult to read how others either interpret you or judge you based on written words. I'm just going to get to the point straight away and just let you know that I wanted to attend this board meeting so you can put a face to a name, so that it isn't just an email you received, but an actual person who took the time to write a letter expressing her thoughts, whether they were concerns or whether she just wanted to let you know she existed. I also wanted to attend this meeting to reiterate what I had said in my email, which is that I fully support the board's unanimous decision to have the students return to school full-time with optional masking and vaccination. Masking and vaccines has obviously been the big talk of the year. And like anything else regarding children, I am thankful that the board has acknowledged the parents and that ultimately it is the final decision of the parents to decide how to approach masking and vaccinations when it comes to their children and their family. Please stand firm and resolute in this decision of optional masking and vaccination, as there are many parents out here who fully support this stance and stand behind you 100%. On many levels, last year has been difficult for all of us. I'm thankful my children will have an opportunity to return to school once again, to be with their teachers and with their friends, to learn and to grow both individually and as a community. I support your decision, and I thank you for your time and commitment to the students of Gettysburg Area School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Thomas. Good evening.
Everybody, hello.
If you
I just wanted to follow up on the email that I sent before about the special funding of how the special needs type children were going to be, helped over the summer with the funding that was received by the state. I remember in the last meeting I was at, I think there was talk about updating equipment. I get that, but equipment, if it went through 1 year of COVID, it can go another year. These kids get this funding. It's allocated for specific things. I still want to know how that's going to be addressed because it has not been answered. Oh, and then the other thing is this Moms of Liberty stuff. As you can see, I'm the only black person in the room. I graduated from here. It was not easy for me. And to know that Alicia is the only black person or black teacher, and she's biracial at that, the only teacher of color. I've never seen one teacher of color besides Alicia. And then y'all want to attack her. Let me tell you, don't make this an Upper Adams School District issue, because it can quickly become one. It can. I'm not going to stand by and let this kind of rhetoric happen when I went through hell here being called nigger. Nigger. Shake your hand, and you weren't called a nigger. I was. My brother being chased home on his bicycle through the alley, a bunch of kids in a pickup truck trying to run him over. That was my brother Marvin. Everybody knows Marvin Thomas in Gettysburg. My dad wanted to hurt somebody that day, and all he was trying to do was ride his bike home. Think about that. Y'all don't think about that. You don't live it. You don't experience it. I moved back here in 2013 from Italy. I'm a retired military wife, and this community has not changed as much as I had hoped. I didn't even want to come back here. I didn't want my son to even come back here and experience the crap that I did growing up. But he did. And he hated it, just like I did. He couldn't wait to graduate, just like I did. I was ADD in school. I learned I was ADD as an adult. I can remember going to the guidance counselor in 7th and 8th grade asking for help. You know what they told me? Try harder, Michelle. You're not doing enough. Wow, and they're supposed to help me. This went on through high school. Miss Thomas, Mrs. Thomas, bless her heart. She was a nice lady, but she didn't give a shit about me either. Michelle, your test scores are phenomenal. What's going on? I don't know, Miss Thomas, you tell me. I'm trying to get help. They don't want to help me. Who's they? You and every single teacher in this district that I've had since 2nd grade. Do you know what it's like to be called a nigger in 2nd grade and go home and ask your mom what it is? I've never heard that word until 2nd grade, and that was Franklin Township. Think about that. I am 51 years old. I came from Union Bridge, Maryland. It was a mixed community. I had white neighbors and black neighbors. Everybody looked out for one another. I never heard that word until I got here. They called me a migrant. I said, Mom, what's a migrant? I didn't even know what the hell that was. I'm sorry I came to school looking like a well-dressed little black girl with hair, you know. My dad had his own business. Until the day he left here. Me and my brothers had to fight. I remember my brothers telling me how they had to fight almost every day in school because they were called nigger. Hell, I was in school suspension. I don't know how many times because I didn't take anybody's crap. You called me something, I punched you in the mouth because that's exactly what you deserve for your ignorance. It starts at home. Women like you. How many of you say nigger on the daily?
Ma'am.
How many of you have said that in your
Ma'am.
life? I'm going to keep it to the real.
Yeah, ma'am.
Listen, my
please hold
point
your-
is, I'm getting to my point. But y'all need to hear it from a black person because you don't. So I'm telling the school board, y'all need to get on board with some diversity. Make it your forefront, like Charles said, because you're not. And until you do, you're going to still have issues. Take it more seriously. For real. You need diversity. You need to teach the truth, not hide behind some moms of liberty. Teach the truth. That's all we're asking, is the truth. And then I'd also like a follow-up on what's going on with the ESSERS funds. I'm out.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Routine approvals. I know Al had sent out the agenda, and at that point, I don't believe anybody asked for anything to be removed from the group. So it's 5.1 through 5.13, 513. May I have a motion?
So moved, Mike Dickerson.
Second, Tim Singh.
Question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of questions. 5.8, athletic admission prices. First, I want to say I'm so happy that we are live streaming our games. I think that is absolutely awesome. It really opens up access to our community, which is great. Gives our athletes more of an audience. I just love it. Couple quick questions, though. As far as the fee structure goes, how was that fee structure set? Was it the district working in collaboration with the NFHS network, or was it one party or the other? Who set the prices?
Good evening. Thank you, Kathleen, for your question. I'm just going to give a quick, short response because I've definitely followed up with Casey Thurston on this. So your particular question on the fee structure is a GASD or NFHS network, and it is developed by NFHS network.
All right, thank you. And you may not have the answer then to this question, but I'm curious to know why the big jump from a 6-month pass at, I'll round up, $60 to a 12-month pass at, I'll round up again, $200.
Sure. A lot of that has a lot to do with the streaming. We want to continue the streaming, so that results in order to keep that process going. So, that.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. I have another question. 5.9, athletic game help rates. Is there an increase in the 21-22 wage rates? And if so, what is it?
Yes, it is an increase in the wage rates. It follows the classified employee wage schedule, as well as a small adjustment to that to cover additional overtime and/or weekend hours needed. Okay.
Do you happen to know that percentage? Is that a percentage?
It's about an average of 2.925%.
Okay. So it's kind of like a COLA, more or less.
Correct.
Yeah? Okay. And really the same question then for 5.10, facility use hourly labor rates.
Yes, the hourly rates did increase for maintenance, security, and custodial. Food service and student workers did not. And at this time, it was really the reason why it did not adjust is due to rounding, because our rates are rounded up rather than bill percents. But the rates from 2021 to 21-22, as you see here, increased by $1.
Oh, thank you. All right, thanks.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, just a question, doesn't have anything to do with finance. It's Sylvan Hershey. In light of our society and in light of the angry feelings that are out there, are we doing any training of our game managers, our game help, just in case we get ourselves into a situation where they need to take action that they may have never had to take in the past?
I'm not the person to technically answer that question. I'd have to defer that to Thurston as well as Mr. Fordham if he knows. We are currently looking at increasing some security in our games. We are having, like other organizations and businesses and industries, having a hard time filling positions. So we are looking at an organization to come in and provide additional support for game security. But I will refer to Casey Thurston, and she can respond at the next board meeting for that specific circulation.
Thank you.
Kathleen, I believe you had another question?
I do, but Dr. Soliday, did you have questions as well?
I do. Before you sit down, if you wouldn't mind, thank you. But the facility use hourly labor rates, are those rates different than a regular daytime rate of pay for the same staff, maintenance, security, custodial? For example, do we pay our custodial staff $36 an hour, or is that just a special rate for facilities use?
That's a special rate for facility use. The base level is based upon our classified wage schedule, and then there's some qualifiers in that as well, such as for overtime and for weekend services.
Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Is Connor Peterman with us this evening? Our Eagle Scout. Connor, would you come to the microphone, please? We're voting on your Eagle Scout project this evening, and I want to thank you for the initiative that you're taking. This improvement to our outdoor learning space will be a lasting legacy that you will leave behind. So kudos on that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the time.
I do have a question for you.
For sure, yep.
It's an easy one, trust me, it's going to be okay.
Okay.
So I just want to know the benches that you're proposing to build. Are you building them yourself, or do you have a team of people that you're working with?
So we have a team of people. I think the tech guy is pulling up a presentation I made, but anyway.
Oh, good.
The benches are going to be made by my Boy Scout troop. It's about 7 of us, and then my grandfather and my dad, who is the scoutmaster of the troop, we are all going to get involved and build them.
I love to hear that it's a collaborative effort and that it's not just you. I mean, just you would be very cool, of course, but the fact that you have this leadership skill to pull together a multi-generational team to make all of this happen is really impressive.
Yes, thank you. So,
Yeah, this is the appropriate time if you're comfortable with your presentation.
yep, I'm ready to go.
Thank you.
So, just like we said, this is my Eagle Scout project proposal, if you want to go to the next slide. So here's a little information about me. This was made like a year back, but I'm an 11th grader now at Gettysburg Area High School. I've been involved with scouting since I've been in first grade, went through Cub Scouts. I did a lot with scouting, and it's a major part of my life. I'm going to lead this off with kind of a story. So when I went to the middle school, in 7th grade, I had Mr. Jones, and he was my first biology teacher. And we would go out once or twice, like for half a class period, out behind to the South Woods, and we would do water studies and nature studies and all these different kind of like fun things. And I mean, you get to do it with your friends, put hip waders on, a lot of hands-on work. And the only reason we would go out once or twice is there's not a whole lot of space out there to work with. Like you can't sit down, you can't write with books or anything. The other thing is there's no area to teach. I mean, the teachers don't have a place to teach out there. So that's what my hope for my project would be. Next slide. So I would like to create a learning environment in that area directly behind the South Woods. It would be 8 benches. Each bench would seat 3 students, and then a teacher's podium for the teacher to teach from. So I think it's on the next slide. There's a mock drawing. If you're looking along the trail, you have your benches along with your teacher's podium, and there, if you look up in the left-hand corner, it says current bench. That is the bench that is there now. So the students would actually look out towards the water where the teacher would be teaching. And if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, that's what the amount of work that would go into the bottom of the ground. So you'd have about 15 inches between the seat of the bench and the ground. This is a rough draft from before. I do have a revised copy at the very end of this presentation. So the estimated cost of the project is between $400 and $600. How I plan to fund that is I've already reached out to Schmuck's Lumber Company in Gettysburg, and I plan on reaching out to Home Depot, Lowe's, and Fastenal to gain other materials for this project. Next slide. So once again, each bench would sit, again, this is older, but it would sit about 3 students comfortably. It would be about 8 feet long and 1 foot wide, and that's what the current bench would look like. Next slide. And then again, more photos on the trail. This is what it would look like with the students where the classroom will be. Next slide. Is that it? Okay, there might be another copy, but let me, I'll be right back if that's okay, if I can go check something real quick. That's actually the right copy. So do you guys have any questions for me that I could answer?
Go ahead, Carrie.
I do have one.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you talk a little bit about your research for the materials that you intend to use?
Yep, for sure. So I plan on using pressure-treated wood for the benches themselves and the podium. That's so it can last a long time and withstand the elements with rain and snow. I mean, we live in Pennsylvania. It gets pretty cold during the winter, so we want something that'll withstand. As well, we're going to put stain on the benches to help it maintain a color. I mean, for upkeep purposes, that would maybe take once every 2 years, just a little spray stain. And to keep the benches secure in the ground, we're going to use Quikrete to solidify the ground underneath it. In the original drawing, there were drainage stones we were going to put underneath, but then we nixed that. It was just one of the changes we had to make. But that's current materials, and I know the rising prices of lumber right now are increasing, but the project isn't that big that it would not exceed X. We think about $650 is probably what it will not exceed.
Thank you.
I want to thank you. You are obviously an exceptional young man, and I've been out here and mucked around exactly where you're talking about, and it's just going to help so many children be able to focus a little bit more and get outside, which we all want our kids to be outside and exploring. I just want to thank you personally. It'll benefit all three of my children, and I really appreciate it. I wish you the best.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Connor. I do appreciate you've done your research and that you're gathering a team of people. And it sounds like you're even thinking about the longevity of your project, which is really important too. All good leadership skills. And I appreciate that you want to use those to improve the educational space at Gettysburg. So thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you again. If there are no questions, if there's a motion, go ahead, Kathleen.
Oh, I know. I have another one. It's my last, so hurrah for that. 5.13 HR recommendations. I'd like to know what our plan is to replace our communications coordinator, and maybe it's in process, I just don't know. But our community has really come to expect consistent communication from the district, and I certainly hope that we're not putting a pause on filling that position. So where are we on that?
The position is currently posted. We're currently screening applicants as they come in. Once we have a quality pool of candidates, we'll have interviews.
All right, thank you, Dr. Perrin. And that's it.
Mr. President, I have a comment more than a question.
Go ahead.
There is a new hire for the law enforcement teacher at Adams County Technical Institute. There was great concern about finding someone who had experience in the field who would be willing to pick up a teaching certificate when students go back to school. So it just makes a fantastic statement about the Adams County Technical Institute and Gettysburg School District that they did find a qualified individual, again, who's willing to commit the time to go back to school to get their teaching certificate while working full-time. So thank you for those efforts.
Thank you, Karen. Roll call 5.1 through 5.13. Carrie.
Yes.
Sylvan.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Al. Al.
Yep.
Thank you. Kathleen.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Amy Beth.
Yes?
And I vote yes.
And I wanted to just point out and introduce our new director of facilities. Just want to stand up and wave. Officially, today was his first day. So,
welcome.
Welcome to the district, and we'll certainly benefit from your expertise with facilities, and certainly we got lots going on. So we're really happy that you're joining us, and with your solid background in construction management, I think over the next 10 years there are a number of projects that we're going to embark on as part of the long range plan. So we're happy to have you aboard, and we hope that you enjoy your time here. His name is Josh.
Welcome, Mr. Reynolds.
I want you to know that with high expectations comes results. Okay. We know what we got, and we are very happy with who we have.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
We'll show you your office soon. I'm just kidding.
All right, moving forward for items for board action, 6.1, non-resident student. May I have a motion, please?
This is Carrie. I move to accept item 6.1.
Kathleen Pratt, second.
Questions? Hearing no questions, roll call. Amy Beth.
Yes?
Al.
Yes.
Modern technology. Kathleen.
Yes.
Sylvan.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes?
And I vote yes. Six point two,
Mr. President?
the health and safety plan. May I have a motion?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mike.
I would like to put forth a motion to adopt the health and safety plan in its revised form as outlined in my handout, which was discussed in tonight's public work session, including the discussed grammar and spelling changes.
I second that.
Question.
Mr. President,
Yes.
since I did comment on Mr. Dickerson's plan in the work session, I just want to make it clear, I have no legal reservations about it. There's nothing disqualifying legally about that plan.
Thank you. So the motion on the floor is the health and safety plan with the revised language that was discussed earlier this evening by Mike and handed to all the board members. It's been first and second. Do I have a question?
Mr. President, I don't have a question, but may I make a comment?
Yes.
Well, as I hope I made clear in our workshop session, I believe that the health and safety plan, prior to the suggested revision, does use language that gives our superintendent and this board the flexibility that it seeks in making decisions that are best for our school district. I feel that the revised language includes substantive changes that in places are non-committal and other places are contradictory. The revised language, I believe, no longer creates a plan, and it's to be a plan. A plan has to have some kind of specific language. And again, the language that we have in the initial plan does allow for flexibility. I want to remind us, as I said in our workshop statement, that the Gettysburg Area School District mission statement is brief, 3 sentences long. The second sentence is, our purpose is to provide a safe and healthy environment in which all students can learn. I believe that we need a health and safety plan that provides for that while giving us the flexibility and adaptability that we want to have. Thank you.
Kathleen,
Yep.
I respect your opinion, and we talked for almost an hour. At the end of the day, the board met in June, and Mike put forth a resolution that was voted 9-0 that indicated on how we were going to open up, and it basically outlined our health and safety plan. And I, like you, read the changes here this evening. Was I aware that Mike was working on something? Yes, but he went directly through Jason. And I don't see anywhere in the language that's deviating or changing the spirit of a health and safety plan at this given night, and that's pretty critical because I suspect that we'll be revisiting this at some point. I hope not. So therefore, I support that change. The language is basically and is, so to speak, but the spirit puts back local first control on how we're going to operate our districts. And we didn't talk about it earlier, but overwhelmingly the emails that are coming in actually want that. And that's just where I'm at this evening.
Yeah, and I'll just repeat, I believe that the initial plan does provide for that flexibility and the option to adapt as we see fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Any additional comments? Hearing none, roll call. Mike.
Yes.
Hang tight. Al.
Yes.
Amy Beth.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Sylvan,
A confident yes.
Kathleen,
No.
and I vote yes. 6.3, emergency instructional time template. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. And second, this is Carrie Soliday.
Question? Hearing no questions, roll call. Carrie,
Yes.
Sylvan,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Al. Hank, I'm sorry. They call him Al. Al?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Amy Beth?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Informational items, as you'll see on your agenda there, include an overnight trip number 1 and an overnight trip number 2. Are there any questions on the informational items this evening? Not hearing any board committee reports. It's my understanding that, Amy Beth, you would have a report on your committee, correct?
Yes, I am your legislative liaison, and it's very nice. I want to welcome you guys. Thank you very much for coming out and participating in what we're doing as a board. It's appreciated very much by me. Our legislators, along with PBSA, have been very busy over the last 2 months, and I have a robust report. I do want to say that if anyone has any questions, I'm going to skim through some of the major topics that have been happening in Harrisburg and that will be affecting our district. So we have a district email, and please reach out to me, and I would love to go in depth about a lot of these things. They're very interesting. The General Assembly has completed its work and sent a state budget to Governor Wolf, which he did sign. The adoptive budget was implemented on July 1st. The $40.8 billion budget is a spending increase of about $1 billion for our state. Among the budget highlights for education are about $300 million increase in basic education subsidies, representing one of the largest increases in history that should offset some of the increases in mandate costs such as pensions and charter school tuition. A $50 million increase in special education funding from 2 years ago will ensure that the state picks up a large share of special education expenses. We have bills that have been signed by our governor that will impact us. Senate Bill 554, public meeting agendas, which is now Act 65, that requires public agencies, including school boards, to post meeting agendas in at least 24 hours before voting in a meeting like this, and prohibits the agency from taking official action on items that are not on the agenda. The bill allows agencies to make changes upon the agenda for the majority vote of the board members who are present. Requirements for posting agenda and changes to the agenda would not apply to the conference, a work session, or an executive session. Senate Bill 664, Operation Year of Instruction due to COVID-19. This is now Act 66. It prohibits the extent of special education enrollment, as well as an optional year of education for students due to the pandemic. Parents would have needed to enroll their students by July 15th. I have the House Bill 101. It's agritourism. It's now called Act 27. Its budget created an Agricultural Activity Protection Act, which provides limited civil liability protection for persons who offer agritourism activities on a farm that meets the conditions that are outlined in the bill. PBSA supports this bill and has created additional opportunities for students to participate in student agritourism activities and programs. House Bill 125 is the William Shotfield Memorial Bridge. This is now Act 28. Designated the bridge in Shaler Township in Allegheny County as the William J. Shotfield III Bridge. Shotfield was the president of PBSA in the 1990s. He was a former Shaler Area School Board president, and the House Bill 125 also recognizes his service in the Navy in World War II and Korea. We have two bills that are still sitting on the governor's desk. The first bill is House Bill 336. This is a repeal of overtime regulations. Amendments for administrative code to repeal regulations created last October pertaining to overtime compensation would be beyond the minimum requirement of the federal law. The regulations, which are slated to become in effect in October, would have required time and a half pay for salaries and personnel who worked over the 40 hours. The last is Senate Bill 618, proof of vaccination and prohibited. This was introduced by Senator Phillips Hill, and she's from York. It prohibits a state and local government, and school districts, and colleges and universities from requiring proof of vaccination. The bill also prohibits the state and any local government from including vaccination status and identification cards or electronic tracking systems. In addition, this bill bans the State Department of Health from requiring face masks, imposing travel restrictions, implementing social distancing guidelines, and mandates shelter in place with the closing of private businesses, institutions or higher education, and subsidies from the PA Higher Education Agency that may not be required from students that they would not have to show their COVID-19 vaccination. Again, please reach out to me if you have any questions on these. I get informed not only from our local legislators, but by email, and I work with PBSA, and I've been proud to do so. So hopefully, if you have any questions, you'll reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabeth. Building and program reports.
No, I've shared everything on the front end.
That brings us to the calendar board of events. Our next meeting will be August 16th. Currently, right now, until further notice, we're here in the middle school, but I believe we are anticipating moving back to our boardroom once school starts to allow the facility here at the middle school to go back to normal and put us back where we belong, so to speak. On a business note, we have executive session immediately following this meeting related to a personnel matter. I want to thank everybody for coming out. From a personal perspective, and not representing any of my colleagues here, it's important to me that we recognize that we're going to have some differences. But playing the differences out on social media or whatever format is generally not a very successful venture to do. If you have an issue, and I'm relating to the article with a particular teacher or with an administrator or somebody within the district, I would think we'd find the courtesy to go directly to the administration first before we're going into the school board. That matter had never reached our level, and it's my understanding it was never going to, because there has not been to date a complaint within our entire district related to any improper teaching. I'm not weighing in right or wrong. I'm just saying that I would hope that when we go back to our meetings, if we disagree, we have at least a respect from each other to hear everybody out, whether we agree or don't agree, and move forward. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Before you hit that gavel, I believe your name was Ms. Shara? Is that right? I don't know if I'm looking at the right person, maybe not. Someone who spoke to us tonight mentioned emails that she had sent. And yes, I want to assure you, when you send the board emails, yes, thank you. When you send the board emails, we all read your emails, but we have an unwritten, uncodified agreement among the board that our president and/or our vice president reply. So if you don't hear from me or any other board member that's not the president or vice president, please know that is why, but rest assured we read them. Thank you.
And I'm one lucky guy to have to be able to answer all those emails. I do appreciate it. Thank you and good evening.